It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Kyle Patrick Dumpert, DMD, MAGD, and Dr. Walter Honor Ackah, DMD. They are the co-host of the Truth Be Told podcast. I love it. Let's introduce Kyle first since he's the young one. Dr. Kyle Patrick Dumpert, DMD, MAGD, grew up in Bedford, Pennsylvania, right smack in the middle between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Eagles. So I have to stop right now and ask, where did you fall? Did you fall?
I fell with the Steelers side, much to Walter's upset.
Okay, well, you're being filmed, so prediction, will your quarterback be back next year?
That's a good question. I think he will be.
Well, that's the truth be told. The truth be told. Kyle graduated from Indiana University of Pennsylvania in 2008 with his bachelors and attended the University of Pittsburgh School of Dental Medicine, where he graduated in 2013. After dental school, he completed a one-year GPR at the Pittsburgh VA Hospital. He then returned to his hometown of Bedford to work for his childhood dentist with plans to purchase the practice. After working for a year, he moved to Kauai, Hawaii, and worked for a year and a half in private practice. When he had enough living in paradise, he traded all the way to move back to Pennsylvania to work for Heartland Dental for a year. He then again moved back to Kauai to work for a small DSO for a month before finally returning to his hometown to buy his own practice, where he currently practices dentistry. In 2017, he received his FAGD. Then in 2018, he received his MAGD. During the summer of 2020, he joined Dr. Walter Ackah as a co-host of the Truth Be Told. And Dr. Walter Honor Ackah, DMD, graduated from dental school in 2009. After dental school, he realized he needed more education to be the super dentist he wanted to be. So he went on to get his GPR training at Pittsburgh VA System. After working for a year as a general dentist, he realized he loved surgery more than dentures, so he applied and got accepted into the Pitt perio residency. Following graduation in 2014, he moved to Houston just to be closer to my grandchildren, where he set up a traveling periodontal business. He's the proud husband to Mary and father of two amazing little girls, Nina and Serena. Are they tennis players?
I wish. Nah, we'll get there, though.
When not doing dentistry, he enjoys hosting the podcast Truth Be Told, cooking, traveling, and watching soccer since he was born in Ghana, West Africa. And I saw him before the show. One of the biggest treats I ever had in my life is 3 times I got to watch a World Cup game in a country that was in the World Cup game. And I'll tell you what, America, you only know America if you've never been outside of America, but you don't know what fans are until you watch soccer. Twice in Africa, once in French. They make American football NFL fans look like they're pre-medicated on Demerol. I mean, when I was watching it in France, I thought the police should have been there an hour ago with a water cannon, and they're like, dude, it's a soccer game. I mean, that's just, it's like, so why, we could do a whole podcast just on watching World Cup games in countries that, I mean, hell, sometimes, in America, they're like, I don't like that call. It's like, well, in Brazil, they killed the ref. God dang.
Colombia, too.
Yeah, it's like when they're talking about these concussion protocols for the NFL. I'm like, okay, you remember in the Roman Empire they used to feed people to lions, right? I mean, I'd rather have a concussion than being eaten at halftime by a lion. But tell us your journey. How did you guys meet? I keep seeing a lot of Pennsylvania in there. So is that that was the initial geographic connection between you two? How did you get connected in Penn and end up in Truth Be Told?
Well, so when initially, actually, Kyle and I was a resident. Kyle, you were finishing up dental school, correct?
I was in my 4th year dental school, and he was in perio residency. Yeah,
and I was in perio residency. After I finished, we went down. And really the way Truth Be Told came about was just basically me and my other buddy that I co-hosted with initially. Him and I were just sitting there drinking alcohol. We were just having a good time. And we started just talking about how our day and our week and so forth. And after a while, we just were like, okay, you know what? This just can't be just us. We have other people that are sitting there complaining about, how dentistry is going or complaining about patients and so forth. And so we were like, I wonder if patients know that dentists are real people too. Like, we put on a face, we're always happy. We have to kind of, basically juggle and do all this extra stuff for patients, but it wears down on us. After the end of the week, it's like, okay, now it's time for us to complain about it and just tell everybody, like, this is what dentistry really is. So we started it just based on that. And it actually has picked up a good amount because patients and actual dental students listen and go, man, okay, so this is what dentistry really is about. And that was the whole point of this, was to be completely honest about what dentists go through. It's kind of like the best things that happen when you take a CE is the presenter giving you the facts on all the good stuff, but also the bad stuff. And so that's what we want to do, is just let people understand that there is good times, great times, and educate them on everything that we know and bring, guests on that can educate more. But we also want everybody to understand that, hey, there is some other stuff that, goes on in dentistry that we don't like. I mean, Kyle, if you listen to our podcast, Kyle talks about insurance all the time, and our dislike for insurance and all the things that could happen with insurance and, how dentists we can do better. And I honestly believe that. And that's why we started, because I believe we could do better as a dental society and just, enjoy what we do, because dentistry provides us with so much that we kind of lose track of that whenever we just, we finish the day and we just go, whatever, does that make sense?
It does. And that's when Walter said to Kyle, I'm gonna start a podcast.
I listened to, so I met Walter when he was a perio resident, because he had done the VA GPR residency. Right. And that was something I was interested in doing. So I was able to get his opinions on that program. Afterward, I heard about him starting this podcast. I liked it, listened to it a lot, started communicating with him. I was on a couple of shows. And then when the opportunity arose where he needed another co-host, he elected me to fill that spot, and I've been on ever since.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, Kyle pretty much criticized my setup the first time he came on the show. He was like, is this what we're doing here? And I was like, listen, I'm not professional like Howard is. All right, let's just.
I flew to Texas just so I could be on his podcast. Right. And that was my excuse to get to Texas.
So I think of your podcast it's so keeping it real. I mean, a lot of dentists want to believe that, if you have fresh flowers in the waiting room and you build $1 million Taj Mahal and you put a painting in the front by, Rembrandt, that, people are just going to come by and throw money at you. And I only see them do that in casinos. That's the only place I've been where people just drive for miles, just dump their purse out on the table. But other than a casino, I mean, you got to do stuff that's not sexy. You got to do extractions and root canals and bread and butter dentistry. And they're like, well, I'm just going to do bleaching and Botox all the way to the Taj Mahal. I mean, I feel like you guys are more keeping it real.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the whole point of this podcast is to basically be honest and just talk about it, right? A lot of dentists want to do full mouth rehabs, but they have no idea about occlusion. Let's be completely honest and start from the beginning. Let's learn about the basics before we get to, what all our mentors and everybody that spent 20, 30, 40 years in dentistry are doing. Let's start from the basics. Learn about occlusion. Learn dentures, basic dentures, right? Because we all know that dentistry, dentures is what led us to aesthetics and occlusion and full mouth rehabs and so forth. And if you don't understand that, how could you possibly sit there and think, I'm going to go ahead and just take a weekend course, and now I'm doing full mouth rehabs? You're doing a disservice to the patient, and you're doing a disservice to the practice of dentistry. I mean, that's how I feel personally. I mean, maybe Kyle's going to be a little nicer about it, but I don't.
No, I refer everybody out for full mouth rehabs. I'm not comfortable with it. I like the bread and butter dentistry. I've been to a lot of continuing education classes, and I know I have the skills to do that work, but with completing a $25,000, $50,000 case, there's a lot more added stress that I don't want to have in my life, that I don't want. Once that treatment plan starts getting higher and higher, then in my mind, I start worrying about lawyers and patient expectations. And I like somebody comes in, they're in pain, I get them out of pain, whether it's with a root canal or an extraction, and they're with me for life.
Well, why, Walter, when you were talking about
Yeah.
occlusion, not knowing occlusion,
Right.
it seems like for three decades, I hear all these, everyone complain that they come out of school and they know caries and peris, but
That's
they
it.
don't know occlusion.
Right.
Why do you think that's been a solid Yelp review on dental schools for 3 decades?
Man, I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I feel like they just, we graduate dental school and we're provided with the education enough not to hurt anybody, but we're not provided with the additional means of just kind of learning more. Like, for me, I look at it as the reason why I did my GPR was because I knew I didn't know enough to do more and to know better. Right. It's kind of like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know as much as you should. And occlusion is something that I don't think any dental school really teaches you. They tell you to bite on, occlusion paper to check your restoration, but they don't tell you about, parafunctional habits. How do you correct for all these other things? And it's something that I think you got to just seek. In dentistry, I'm not sure if dental school they have enough time. Even if, for example, I have two buddies of mine who are prosthodontists, and they spent 3 additional years just to learn occlusion. They do all these other things, but prosto residency is about occlusion. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, they took 3 years to learn occlusion. Why is it that we expect us to? Why do people expect to learn that on a weekend course? I don't get that at all.
So when you guys talk to each other, Kyle and Walter, do you looking back, Kyle, you got your MAGD, your general dentist. Walter became a periodontist. Do you think there's an advantage, a blatant advantage to specialize or not specialize? What would you tell a kid who was a junior, senior in dental school, the pros and cons of specialty or general?
I'll start. I don't see the point of going to specialize. In my case, I am so happy there are specialists out there, but as a general dentist, I can pick and choose what I want to do, what I'm comfortable doing. And if somebody's going to be a headache in my chair or is that I'm going to get in too deep that I'm uncomfortable, I always have that out to refer a specialist or refer that patient to a specialist. When it comes to, you talk a lot about what a general dentist makes versus what a specialist makes. I think if you're going to be a general dentist, get out of the cities, get into small town, get into rural, because the numbers that you talk about, Howard, are they don't apply to rural dentistry.
Well, I mean, I kind of agree with Kyle. I mean, I think general dentists work way harder than specialists do. I'll be honest with you and then say that. And a lot of people may not like that, but you have to know so much. And as a good general dentist, you have to know what all the other specialists kind of know, you know what I mean, in order to be able to refer them correctly or be able to work with them properly. A lot of specialists don't even take the time to learn, basic general dentistry. So they just go, okay, well, whatever the general dentist says to me, I'm going to do. And I think that 1 year for me, and I think everybody should do a residency, honestly, before you specialize, because it allows you to understand the basics so you can talk to your referring dentist in a better, more proper way. Do I think that being a specialist is something, how would you say this a lot, right? You do extractions, third molars, I mean, as fast as oral surgeons. So it's really just the skill set, and it's a matter of just taking the time to learn the skill set. You don't have to specialize in order to know the skill set if you take the time to do it properly. So again, I mean, I'm not sure if being a specialist is something that is for everybody. I hated dentures. I never wanted to do dentures. I did it in residency. I never want to do it again. That's why I said, okay, let me just stick to something that I really enjoy, something that makes my life a lot easier, and something that I literally can listen to my slow jams and do all day, which is extractions, surgeries all day. I literally have slow jams on while I'm doing my surgery, and that's what makes me happy. You know what I mean? But that's not for everybody.
And
Go ahead.
I also hate dentures. I don't know a whole lot of dentists that do, but again, as a general dentist, I can pick and choose that I don't want to do dentures. I can refer that out to the local denture clinic, and I have the ability to dip my toe into, I started doing implants at my practice 2 years ago. So I can pick and choose what are the easy cases and start to build my skill and not have to deal with something that is, a full mouth rehab or all on four or any of that stuff. That's what specialists are for.
And take us back. I mean, you're in Pittsburgh right now. What is the temperature right now in Pittsburgh today?
It's probably, I think, 20 degrees outside right now, something like that.
And I'm freezing here in Phoenix. Phoenix, it's only 73 today. I'm serious. It was cold when I got up. It was 55. But you were out there in Paradise. Did you practice dentistry there? Were you an associate, or did you just surf all day long?
I was an associate at a private practice. It was a brand new office, ground up build, done by Henry Schein. And it really was paradise. I was working 4 days a week and surfing on 3 days a week, working 4 days a week, perfect temperatures all the time. But it all came back to all my family, all my friends are on the East Coast. And no matter where you're at, home is where your friends and family are. And that brought me back twice.
This is very politically incorrect, but I have to ask you because I've known a lot of people out there. Did you ever, how long were you there? A year and a half?
Yes.
Did you ever felt like you fit in, or did you never really fit in because of the Dole family and the fact that they went down there and stole Hawaii?
I like that I'm getting the discrimination question on the podcast.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's
keep it going, Howard.
It's true. It's true. Americans don't. It's like Americans don't want to talk about their abusive state boards. Like I'm here in Arizona. And the Guadalupe Indian Reservation has 20,000 people. And whenever a dentist on the other side of the Arizona border in Yuma, in Molar City, where the Americans all drive down there to go to him, and if he comes up here, the board will call the police and they'll arrest him and put him in a cage and he'll go to trial. I mean, it's like, can we talk about that? Like, no, you're not supposed to talk about that. It's like, it's abuse. And I always felt that you were from the country that ripped off their country with a pineapple king, Mr. Dole. And I was just wondering, in honesty, when you were there for a year, did they get over that and accept you, or was it still just a glaring issue?
I never had I had one problem with one patient, and believe it or not, it was a white patient, female patient that was more comfortable being treated by an Asian dentist than a white dentist. But I've lived in a couple of different areas. I've traveled to a couple of different countries, and as long as you treat people with respect and kindness, which I treated everybody that way, they were all extremely welcoming of me. You get accepted when you go to a locals only surf spot and they're sharing the waves with you and taking turns. And as long as you're respectful to them, I never once felt that I wasn't welcome there. But Kauai is different than Oahu or some of the bigger cities. Kauai is a smaller town feel where you really know everybody that's there.
Do you think that would have been the same in Honolulu, Oahu?
No, I think I know some dentists that practice there, and there was a lot more of an issue because of the city atmosphere.
Yeah. And what I've noticed going around the world is that when you're a dentist talking to dentists, the dentists love each other. They just hate each other's government. You know what I mean? They're like, just please don't associate me. In fact, it was kind of funny. There's some pretty famous international dental speakers that taught me a trip a long time ago. He goes, when you're going into it's going to be tough. Just go get the Canadian black leather jacket with a big Canadian flag. And I've been told that a long time, and it only saved me one time. This guy said to me, it was at a bar, and he came out to me, and he goes, "Are you an American?" I go, "No, I'm Canadian." He goes, "Oh, sorry." And it's like, my God. It's like that Say No to Drugs by Nancy Reagan or whatever. You got to practice that. Just practice. I'm Canadian. Say that 100 times before you go around the world, because they're going to teach you your history class. So what do you do? How do you guys reset the clock on a young kid's expectation and wants to come out of school and they seriously think they're going to do bleaching and bonding and Botox and Invisalign and live happily ever after? And it's like, dude, you're a doctor. It's going to be blood and guts, extractions and root canals, and the rest is just fancy. It's not the meat and potatoes. How do you? Well, first of all, do you believe that the meat and potatoes they come in pain? You got to pull the tooth or do a root canal, or you're not treating the patient?
The basics. I think the basics of dentistry is always going to be there, right? You talked about the meat and potatoes. Like if a patient comes to you in pain, you give them options. Do you want the tooth taken out? What do you want to replace it with? Do you want to do a root canal? Do you want a crown on there? What kind of crown are you going to do? So the basics is always going to be there. I just honestly think that people want to go online. We're like the Instagram generation where everything's pretty. Everything has to be, like, for example, and I want to give a shout out, but Dr. Ackah, he does beautiful veneers and crowns and so forth. And everybody thinks that that's the kind of lifestyle that every dentist needs to live and every dentist needs to. That's not the case. 99.9% of us aren't going to be traveling between two, countries, three, or however many he travels to do dentistry. Like he is very, very special. He's very selective. Most of us aren't going to do that. And I think our podcast allows people to understand what dentistry really is and how just basic and you have potentials to expand. I really believe that. But I also think that you have to keep your expectations down to a level that makes sense. Like Kyle said, if you want to do well financially, why are you in a big city competing with 50 million other dentists? Go to the rural areas, set up, because I promise you'll have a lot of patients coming to you. Like Kyle and I had a conversation where in his town, there is not even a single oral surgeon, a periodontist. If I were to say, okay, if my wife allowed me to, and I were to come down to or go up to Bedford, I would make a killing because I would be the only person that would be, the periodontist there. I don't understand why we don't do that. And I think you mentioned this, Howard, multiple times. I don't understand why this is still not something that resonates with people. Everybody wants to live this glorious life, but sometimes you got to just say, I'm going to live in the country and travel in my Porsche to the city.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go where you're needed, and they make it about themselves. To tell you how bad it is, every DSO CEO that I know has already written off the rural. They only plan on going to urban because the young single people, they come out of school, they're not going to have any chance finding a mate in Beeville or Eloy. They want to be in Houston. They want to be in the big cities. They want to increase their chance and look as pretty as a peacock and all that kind of stuff. If someone asks you this, beyond the bread and butter, do you think there's more demand in the cosmetic clear aligner Invisalign or the implants?
I say implants. Kyle, what do you say?
In my area, it's I'd say it's 50-50 in my area, but I'm not doing a lot of Invisalign. I don't enjoy orthodontics. Like Walter said, in my town, it's the closest oral surgeon is 45 minutes to an hour away, and it's a 6-month wait to get in to see him. So if you're good at the bread and butter stuff, why would I want to do Invisalign and be married to a patient for years just to get the same fee that I get by doing a root canal and crown on somebody that takes me 1 or 2 visits?
And you know what? I can actually tell that you're not into cosmetic dentistry. I can tell because you leave that hair on your head like Ben Roethlisberger instead of shaving it like Terry Bradshaw, Walter, and Howard. I mean, the people that really care about their looks, Bradshaw, Walter, and me. I mean, you'd have to shave your head. So the fact that you're still growing that hair on your head, I knew.
You're doing too much. You're doing too much, Kyle.
So how big of a town is Bedford then? How small is it if it's got a 6-month wait for an oral surgeon?
The county itself is roughly 50,000 people. The town is maybe 20,000. And
are you married there or are you single?
I am single.
Do you see why? I mean, is it harder for a single dentist to go to a small town and find a peacock than say if you were in Houston? Do you think
that absolutely, and that's part of the reason I moved around so much is I didn't have anything tying me down. I could go where I wanted to go and meet new people in different areas, but home is home, and I always knew that I would come back to my hometown.
I love your surfboard sitting behind you. Is that your favorite surfboard?
That's actually my assistant made that. It's a chair that my assistant made for me for Christmas.
Wow.
Yeah, or a storage coat hanger surfboard thing.
That is so cool.
Made that for me.
So you own your own practice, and
yes.
And so do you own the land and building? Did you buy the practice? Did you start a de novo? How did you do it?
It was a practice that was established 30 years ago. The husband, or the dentist, and his wife was a hygienist. I went to school with their kids. She was my soccer coach growing up. And when I made the decision to come back the second time, I knew they were looking to sell. So I bought it in 2018, March of 2018. And Thursday, a couple of days ago, I just bought the real estate.
Wow. And how's it going?
It's going great. There is, for any of the young dental students listening, to find a practice that is established, that you plan on being at for a long time, that was bread and butter. It's amalgams, patchwork amalgams, and every day people are coming in with a broken tooth, and you take a picture with an intraoral camera, show them what's in their mouth, and it's automatic crown. And that like I said, 2 or 3 times a day, every day of the week that happens. And I'm not selling dentistry. I'm showing people what is in their mouth. This is the treatment option that's available. This is what I think is best for you. And because it's a small town, that trust is there. They're going to see me for the next 30 years at this practice. And so there's no reason why I would want to take advantage of somebody when I'm going to see them at the grocery store tomorrow.
Right. And so describe your practice.
Well, so for me, I actually travel to different offices, and I work with a big DSO down here in Houston. And I've just kind of set it up. Say it again?
Can you give the name of the DSO?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If you don't mind, it's Pacific Dental.
Okay. With Steve Thorne?
Yeah. With Steve Thorne. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just go between about 9 or 10 offices. And just set up. I mean, the one good thing about them is once you get, and I'm actually very lucky because a lot of the people I work with, I'm also friends with. So, we actually have the relationship where if there's an issue or a way to improve the practice from a periodontal point of view, we can have that discussion. I can't speak for everybody working with Pacific, but I know for sure that I'm very lucky in that sense. You know what I mean? So it's very beneficial because I go in there, I do what I need to do. If there's an issue or anything like that, we have a direct communication. We get it resolved. We go from there, and it's actually getting even better because now I'm getting them to understand perio. Initially, the hardest part was trying to get them to understand what periodontal disease was, trying to get them to understand what I even did, besides just take a tooth out, place an implant. They're very good at that. But there were so many other factors that I had to kind of educate them on. And again, that goes back to dental school. What do we really know about perio? What do we know about ortho and so forth?
So, Walter, you're a traveling periodontist. You go into other offices. Well, what is your website for that? Do you just have the website of the dentist you go into?
Yeah. So basically, they just put me on their website as one of the providers.
But what's your website? Some dentists wanted to contact you about coming into their office. What website?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So there's let me see. There's Parallel Modern Dentistry. There's Spring Klein. There's Parallel Dentist with an S. There's Champions Modern Dentistry. So most of the time it's just modern dentistry and whatever locations, Spring, Cypress. So I work from Spring, which is all the way up north in Houston, and then all the way down in Pearland, Pearland.
But do you, so if you go into an office, you set up a website and then the name of the city, then add Modern Dental to the end?
Well, no. So what happens is whenever I partner up with them, they basically add me to the website that already exists for that office.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're mostly going into modern dentistry dental offices?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because that's like most of the Pacific Dental in Houston. Anyway, I'll speak for that area. it's like modern dentistry, and it's like that's kind of the names of them.
And do you think that's a good strategy? I mean, Aspen will go in there. Aspen names every single one of their practices Aspen.
Yeah.
And Heartland is kind of like Kroger, where, you know, Kroger grocery stores, there are Fry's and Arizona, Dillon's and Kansas. What do you think is the advantage? Do you think it should be Aspen Dental every one, or this Friends Modern? I mean, I always know it's an Aspen site just because if you look at the site, I mean, you can just tell it's an Aspen site. But first of all, how is it? So when you say you're a traveling periodontist, is it only for Aspen store locations?
So I used to actually I go to other private practices and stuff like that too. So it's not just for Pacific Dental. So I go to other offices and provide my specialty to general dentists that want to bring in specialists. And that's really big in Texas. I can't speak for any other state, but in Texas, because of the DSO is really big, and there's tons of DSOs down here, the mentality for general dentists is to have the specialists come into their office. So that's something that we're dealing with down here is the change in the dynamics where a specialist would have an office and the general dentist will refer to them. Now it's more of a, you know what, you're going to go into that office because, the general dentists have told the patients, hey, why don't we have everybody coming into this office, and the patients like that. They like that convenience, so that's something that you kind of fight an uphill battle when it comes to that. Is it great? It is. It makes it easier for the patient. Is it easy for me? No, I travel all over the place. It's harder in that sense. And then when it comes to naming it the same exact thing, I worked at Aspen, and the one problem that I found was a patient couldn't really differentiate between the two Aspens. So when they left a review, it might have been for the wrong office. You see, so you're getting hit with a review that wasn't even meant for you. And that was something that I noticed. And I was like, well, I never even saw this patient. That was for somebody else or another office, a few miles down the road. But guess what? Because it was Aspen, they just saw Aspen Dental and blah, 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 blah. And I think that whole keeping it consistent, it's great for the company, but I don't know if it's great for the office individually.
Well, I know that story too well. I was at Chicago Midwinter one time after lecturing all day, and I was at this party, and all of a sudden, two bouncers physically manhandled me, dragged me all the way out, and threw me out on the street. And I'm like, what the hell did I do? I couldn't figure it out. And then like 5 minutes later, Bob Ganley, the CEO of Ivoclar, runs out there and goes, no, not that bald guy, the other bald guy. And I'm like, so I understand how they could confuse Aspens when I was confused with another bald guy who was losing his mind. But anyway, I got a bunch of free drinks from Bob Ganley that night. That was fun.
That's it.
So do you, Kyle, do you see, no DSOs in rural Pennsylvania? I mean, are they only in the big cities like Pitt and Penn? Pittsburgh, Philadelphia.
They were mostly only in the big cities. I rumor has it that Heartland just bought one of the small offices in my hometown, but
right there in Bedford.
Right, that's what I've heard, and they haven't been able to find a dentist. They've all been temporary dentists that have been coming from different areas to fill in. They haven't been able to find that steady dentist to work there, which I think is what you mentioned earlier, a problem that they run into.
Well, it's a huge problem. I mean, these DSO CEOs have told me that their rural offices on any given day, 10% of them don't have a dentist. I mean, that's just huge. And I think it's about to switch because Phoenix was ground zero for Google's driverless car deal. And my gosh, I can't believe it's been going 5 years. No one died during the whole test. The number one complaint they had, here's how weird humans are. I mean, they're like cats and dogs. They're just so funny. But the number one problem they had was when people saw driverless cars going down the street, they'd throw rocks at it. Humans are, I'm always getting mad at my dog. I mean, I'm thinking, well, my dog Mowgli, he's smarter than half the people I know. They're just bizarre. But imagine you have a driverless car technology and you when I go to that small town, I always say that in America, the dentists wake up in the morning, and they're usually sitting in demographics of about one dentist for every 2,000 people. And then they get on the freeway and commute for an hour, and they get out of their car where there's a dentist for every 500 people. I'm like, you idiot, you just commuted an hour to get, it's insane. But if he would have gotten the car and drove an hour out of town, he could have drove into a place where there's one dentist for every 6,000. And if it's an hour or 2 hours, who cares? Because when you look at this driverless car format, where it's just going to be a battery on 4 wheels, if you had a 2-hour drive, if my alarm went off at 6 o'clock and said, okay, now time to move your fat butt to the bed in the car, and you just went down in the car and fell back asleep for 2 hours, or you had a recliner and you had a big screen or your computer, music or whatever, but you're not going to be sitting there at the wheel changing lanes and all that. You're just going to be sitting in a driverless transportation thing. But it just obviously, I mean, I know if you go to Pew, that was a charity foundation think tank for Save the Oceans. And, but they got into healthcare. That was their next pivot. And in dentistry, they do all the demographics of the areas that have a shortage of dentists. So they've done all the work for you. And it seems like the only people that listen are married Mormons that have 3 kids in dental school. They got a stay-home wife. They're eventually going to have like 18 kids and live in a shoe. And the guy's like, I got to find a great location. And you say, well, look, here's like 11% of the counties don't even have a dentist. And I know one, several of them, like one went to Iowa. He was the only dentist in the county. He had $400,000 in student loans. The first year, he does $1.4 million and takes home $400,000. But he has his own entertainment. He has his wife, kids. He doesn't need a bar and fancy lights and all that. So if you have all your social stuff met, why not go in a small town? I hated raising my 4 kids in Phoenix because in Wichita, I mean, you got a mini bike or a go-kart, you just took off down the street. And me and John Lees, who's now an endodontist in L.A., I mean, we rode our motorcycles our mini bikes to each other's houses. Then when my kids tried to do that in Phoenix, the police always return them. And I'm like, well, what the hell's wrong? He has a helmet, and she goes, we had to be 18 years old. It's a side street on a Saturday. Are you out of your mind? And the police like, yes, we are completely out of our minds. And we will arrest your kid and put him in a cage if he does it again. But there's a lot of advantages to small town living. And,
now, Howard, have you seen since the pandemic started, there seemed to be a mass exodus out of the big cities for a lot of people, whether it because of the shutdowns, because of civil unrest or anything. Have you seen in any of your stuff where there have been more dentists going out into the rural areas from the cities?
I have not, but I have noticed this much. You used to go on a vacation, just get an airplane and fly, or take a cruise, or go to Hawaii or whatever, and the real estate 2 hours out of town has doubled in Phoenix, Arizona. Like, so if you leave Phoenix and you go up towards the mountains, like the Flagstaff area, a $200,000 home is now $400,000. I mean, so everybody's flocking out of there. And RVs. I mean, RVs are just selling out of your mind. And I want an RV, but I want to wait till it's a driverless RV. I mean, I do. I mean, I don't want to drive the damn RV because when I do, I always spill my beer, and I hate that. So what advice? So you're a traveling periodontist. Specialists don't ever like talk about this, but what is the standard fee split when specialists go into an office? Mainly oral surgeons, endodontists, periodontists. How does that work usually?
Well, so that's actually a really good question.
And listen up, people, because it's a closely guarded secret.
Well, I don't care enough to guard that secret, I guess. For me, I look at it like this: who's bringing in what, right? If I'm using your office and you're providing me with the patients because you're referring the patients to me, and I'm bringing in my own assistants, my all the materials, like if, for example, implants. So the overhead for me is a little higher. Of course, I'm going to take more, right? So I'm looking at 65, 70%, right? But I honestly think there needs to be a symbiotic relationship where you get something in return to make it seem like, hey, this is actually worth my time for this specialist to be in my office. I'm not going to sit here and take 80, 90%, 100% of the, or 95% of the fee, because then it's like, what's the point of me being in your office? You're providing me with, you have overhead that you have to take care of, right? The lights are still on. So for me, I look at it and say, okay, the more I'm bringing to the game here, the more I'm going to take 65, 70%. But I don't see anybody really going over 70%. But I could be wrong. There could be somebody out there that would actually agree to take 80%. That'd be crazy. If I was a general dentist, I wouldn't want someone coming to my office and giving me 20% when I'm pretty much providing most of the hard, stuff for them.
Well, if you think about capacity, macroeconomically, the fact that there's 168 hours in a week, right. And how many hours would you say the average dentist works per week? What would you guess?
32.
Yeah, 32.
Okay, so take 32 divided by 168, and you get 19%. Yeah. So 80% of all the capacity of dentistry is never used, and there's no reason in the next decade anybody should build a dental office, because someone needs to build a dental Uber app. Because if I came out of school and you called me up and you said, I need an office, an office, 80% of the operatories are idle at all times. If 8 out of 10 operatories are never in use, well, shit, I shouldn't have to go buy land and building and build a dental office. I should just be able to, hey, Uber Dental, I'll meet you at this address, drop a pin, text it, show up, do it. So what have you learned going in? I want to find out what you've learned from being a periodontist in so many different dental offices, because there's a lot of periodontal mysteries that I don't understand. Like you go to a periodontist, he's got like 25 referrals, right? 5 of them refer 100% of all the crown lengthening procedures for 10 years, and the other 20 have never referred one time. So it's like, which one's a mermaid and which one's a unicorn? I mean, it's like something's not right there.
Well, so a lot of people know that. So the way it looks, the way I've noticed, it's like this: if you have periodontal disease, deep pockets or whatever, the first thing everybody says is go to the periodontist. They don't even talk to the patient about, is it restorable from my point of view, or can I do anything with this? So if as a periodontist, if I think the tooth can be saved, I'm going to save the tooth. It may not benefit you if the occlusion is all messed up, if there's parafunctional habits and all that stuff. So I think the first thing is, a lot of people need to look at the big picture and say, you're not just sending it to periodontist because they have deep pockets. You're sending it to periodontist because I need to keep these teeth, or I need to do this and this and this. So running the ship, like I always say to everybody, like you're running the bus here. You're the one in charge. You're driving the bus here. I need you to let me know what you can do, because I'm only going to tell you from a periodontal point of view what I can help you with. You see, another thing that I've noticed is, like you said, there are people that are really good at just sending us or sending me implants, but don't know anything about crown lengthening. And other people want to do crown lengthening, even if the tooth cannot be crown lengthened. So it's just a matter of like, they're stuck in one way, and it's hard for me to get them out of that way until I spend multiple hours with them saying, see, look at this one, look at this. And the best thing for me is I actually take a lot of pictures and show them, do like a slideshow to explain to them what I can do. And it's not just one lecture, it's multiple lectures to get them to understand what perio really is. And I've realized that for doing this for as long as I have, let's just break it down and just do one. Let's focus on crown lengthening. Next month, we'll do free gingival grafts. Next month, we'll do connective tissue. So it's not like, let me just bombard you with everything. Let's just show you this, get you really good at referring that, seeing that with your eyes, and then move on from there. And that also includes hygienists. I
just massively increased the percentage of my referrals to the periodontist that will go. A lot of times I never go, but I guess what you're saying is, yeah, you need to go see Walter. He's got deep pockets. Those girls will be running. Really? Where is this rich guy? They'll drive straight there. They don't understand perio, and you're calling it with deep pockets.
Well, it's so funny. That's what we always do when we're on the podcast. We just keep it as simple as possible. But for the dentists that are listening, periodontal pockets, attachment loss and so forth. But yeah, we just deep pockets is for the podcast. We try to keep it simple because everybody's listening to us.
So, are you implant agnostic? I mean, it's confusing when big companies like, say, Invista. I mean, he owns Noble Biocare, the high-end Mercedes-Benz, and he owns Neodent out of Brazil for the value deal. So he owns Southwest Airlines and First Class and Delta. Does it matter? What would you say to a dentist if they're like, is it okay to save money and buy value implants from, Neodent, or do I need to pay top dollar for Noble Biocare?
Yeah. Oh man, this is it. My personal opinion, and I'll be honest with you, my personal opinion is most of the time, if you do look at the research, most implants integrate, right? We look at implant research, it's like 99, 95% integration. It doesn't really matter, right? And so the one thing that I tell all my referring dentists and anybody that wants to do implants, I say, what does your rep look like? Like in that area, where you are right now, can you get a rep into your office? Is the company actually very receptive to your questions and trying to get you more education about implants? If you can understand that and have somebody that can guide you and help you along the way, that's all that really matters. I personally don't think any one implant is better than other. It's what feels comfortable in my hands, and that's one thing I can't stand. It's like whenever you go to a lecture and they're paid off by this company and this company, that's all they gear their lectures to, is that implant. Well, there's thousands of implant companies out there, and we all can't be great, but we all can't be bad either. It's just a matter of just being honest and saying what works best for me financially and in my hands. Maybe this system is easier to understand than this other system. Okay, this system, okay, 3 drills and I'm placing my implant. This one might need to be stepped down with, bone densification or something like that. There's so many different factors that go into it. It's just a matter of looking and understanding how the reps are around your area, because if you need help or have some issues or missing a piece of material or something, the rep can come and help you out. And then also making sure that you get the information for it. So I don't think any implants are implants, to be honest with you.
I like some of the features of like a Zimmer implant. That's what I use. And two reasons I picked that implant company. One, that's what we use in a residency, so I was familiar with it. And two, they acquired the Encode healing abutment from, I forget the name of the company, but it's a scannable healing abutment. And I want to make the process as easy for the patients as possible. When I was learning how to do implants, trying to screw in an impression post, get the goo in their mouth, trying to find the little screw hole to release the impression post from the impression, that all made things too complicated. And the patient didn't like having a huge tray in their mouth with all these little tiny screws. So with a scannable healing abutment, that whenever I place the implant, the healing abutment that can be scanned is in their mouth, I never have to numb that patient up again. The only time I'm going to touch that implant after placing it, I scan it once. When the crown's ready, I unscrew the healing abutment and I screw the tooth in, and it's easy. And patients absolutely love that ease of treatment.
But
and
you
Kyle,
prefer Zimmer?
I prefer Zimmer just because they have that feature available.
And
Kyle never even said anything about osseointegration at all.
No,
he talked about what was easy for him to deal with.
What's easy for me and what's easy for the patient.
Yeah, and that's what I think the implants really have become, is just what's easy for me to deal with.
Well, I think you said it also, the rep. I mean, my gosh, if you don't have any support, you're all alone. And if you don't have any support, you might as well buy online. You might as well buy e-commerce, because but if you need that rep. And what's funny for me, I'm completely different. What I liked most about my rep was the social queen saying, hey, Thursday they're all going to be drinking at this place, and you're like, God, because it's a big town. There's 3.8 million people. There's 3,800 dentists, and you don't know where all the alcoholics are and where they're all drinking all that. But I did notice that Zimmer Biomed announced its intent to spin off its spine and dental businesses, but into a new company. But I thought that was really interesting, unless I'm reading this wrong, that the dental is going to go with spine. It's like, okay, at first I read that it's like, is dental going to be separate? Then maybe get picked up by like Invista, which is kind of getting to be a big holding company, which was spun off from Danaher. Or are they actually going to combine spine and dental? I thought that was very interesting, but it reminds me of the milk research. Remember they had to spend all that $1 million of drink milk with the milk mustaches, and at the same time Florida was saying drink Florida orange juice, and nobody could measure any result from this campaign. But then they changed the packaging of milk from being a square carton to round, so it actually fit in your car holder. And that jumped milk sales, 12, 15%. So there was a deal where the best marketing was a change in packaging. And you were saying that when you want to implant, you wanted this rep nearby, a support. And, and you were saying what you liked about the techniques and all that stuff. So it's not always price. It's sometimes packaging, convenience. It's all kinds of different things. So a lot of people... What do you think young kids don't understand the most when they decide to start the journey of learning how to place implants?
How difficult implant dentistry really is. Because implant dentistry is not just, well, from a specialty point of view, implant dentistry is not just placing the implant, doing the uncovery, and that's it. There's restorability, there's occlusion, there's, quality of bone. There's so many other factors that you have to understand and learn, and one thing that I think we've become is very dependent on, I did this surgically. I did a surgical guided case and it's supposed to be perfect now, right? Without understanding basics of surgery, flap control, suture techniques, regeneration. There's so many other factors. It's not just, here's a hole, let me put that in, let me put a screw in there. If that's the case, then anybody could be doing it and then everything will be perfect. That's not the case. There's so many other factors. What about systemic issues? If you're uncontrolled diabetic, if you're a smoker, there's so many other factors that I don't think we talk about. We just talk about, look at my implants. We go to a conference and we talk about, look at how beautiful my implants were, how beautiful my restoration was. But we don't talk about all the other factors that go along with it and the failures. We don't ever talk about that. Everything has to be
that's the only time I ever learn anything. I mean, if you do 100 crowns in a row and they all drop in, you didn't learn anything. You're just on an assembly line. I mean, I love it when the lecturer shows up, especially the implants. I love it when the lecturer shows up and says, hey, I've been practicing 20 years. Here's my top 10 nightmare failures that almost made me jump off the Empire State Building.
Yes, sir.
And then you're just like, wow, you just learned so much. But it's always the opposite. It's always like, I have no self-esteem. Here's the 10 cases that I've been lecturing on for 10 years. And I'm going to come here and show my 10 perfect cases and not even share with you how I got these results because it's all about me. And if they're high self-esteem, and I mean, they're really high self-esteem. They just show their failures, and that's where all the learning takes place.
Yeah,
and that's something we talk about on our podcast is the failures that we run into on a daily or weekly basis.
That's right. And another thing too is it's funny how no one ever really mentions that no one understands peri-implantitis and how to actually treat it. I've gone to lectures. I've gone to perio meetings, and one lecturer might literally say, okay, this is how I treat peri-implantitis. An hour later, after they're done, another lecturer comes on and says the complete opposite of how to treat peri-implantitis. And we don't discuss that at all. We can be honest and say it's a 50-50 coin toss, but we don't talk about that at all. We go, this is the person that, showed me this technique, and it may work and it may not work. And then this person, so peri-implantitis is another thing that's associated with implant placement that I don't believe we talk about. Post-op care, when it comes to perio maintenance, we don't talk about that, or implant maintenance. We don't talk about that as much as we should. Again, these are things that we talk about on the podcast, and just we're very honest about dentistry and what we need to do better.
Well, I'll tell you what you just said, that exact phenomena about what we don't talk about, when it goes back to why I started Dental Town, I was published 4 times in the Journal American Dental Association. And each time I got the issue, I'm reading it. I didn't even know it was mine. I didn't even know I read it. And I'm reading this because I wrote something real, like we would be saying right now. And then you call them and say, well, what about this? What about? They're like, Howard, we can't say that. Well, we can't do that. And basically, all I was told is that no, everything's going to be washed down, filtered, and when you're done, it was like dental economics for 20 years. They had the first column was like by Roger Levins, and it's like they took all of his articles, put them in a blender, hit buzz for 5 seconds, poured it out, and it was the same shit every month. Be nice to your staff. Oh, I'm sorry. Was someone saying be an asshole to your staff? You should do. I mean, everything he said, it's like, okay, I've never heard anyone even say the opposite. So, I mean, why don't you just say, dentists should breathe 12 times a minute. They should make sure their heart is beating over 50. And that's why podcasts are taking off. I mean, Dental Town's up to now 75 podcast shows are now uploaded. And some of these people have 1 million downloads from just the Dental Town app. And it's because if you wrote this up and sent it to any dental magazine, number one, they're going to edit it to 600 words. Number two, they're going to edit it so nobody's offended. I mean, and then number three, when they're done with it, you just wasted all your time. I mean, you should have just watched an NFL game. Hell, a rerun. I'd rather watch a rerun than read out this stuff. But I really think podcast is unfiltered. And how many times you've been to a seminar where you're listening to the guy speak, and he loses half the crowd at lunch, and by the third break, we're down to 10. And then when you're done, you go to the bar, 2 drinks later, he's given the best endodontic presentation. And I'll say, well, how come you didn't talk like that? I asked him, this one guy asked him, I said, I asked you, what do you think of thermophil? And you start drawing on about it, endodontic operators. And then at the bar, you're like, shit, no, I wouldn't use that stuff. I hate that shit. I can't get it. And it's like, why don't you talk like real people talk to each other? Why? Do you think podcasts is a bigger license to be truthful, politically incorrect, tell it like it is?
Well, I mean, honestly, the reason why we continued, we actually thought of the idea of a podcast was because of your podcast and how legitimately honest you were with everybody that came on. If you didn't agree with them, you said, hey, this is my point of view. And it wasn't like anybody was going to fight you. You know, Kyle and I don't always agree on a lot of the stuff that we talk about on the podcast, but it's good though. Like, it's not like we're going to hate each other at the end. We're like, this is my point of view and this is your point of view. Let's have a discussion about it. You know what I mean? I just don't understand why we can't do that more often, because when you listen to your podcast, you'll get something out of it. And I mean, Howard, no matter what, hate him or love him, you're going to be completely honest about how you feel. And I think that that's what it should be. And that's what lectures should be. That's what CE should be. It shouldn't be so cookie cutter, like you said, just, let me be politically correct about everything. I mean, it's I don't know.
And families are even tough. Like, my 2 oldest sisters went into the nunnery, and other family members that weren't all into this Catholic stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, so you're not into all the Catholics. She's still blood family. You see it now with politics. I mean, it's like Democrats and Republicans can't even go to the same family reunion. It's like, is there anything more to your life than your political party and your church? Can't you just go here and, I mean, your family, you grew up, and I have no problem not believing or disagreeing with anybody. What I have a problem is when you're lying to me because you think I can't handle the truth, and you're trying to dumb it down. You're like, well, Howard's some bold fart from Arizona, so I don't want to say, and you tell me what I want to hear. And that's why I never trust people that wear, seriously, a tie, because I always believe that when you have a tie on, it's to keep the foreskin from coming up over your head. And you're either going to try to...
I'm glad I took my tie off.
You're either trying to take my money. It's like when Willie Nelson's on the Tonight Show, everybody believes him. I mean, he already admitted he's stoned, didn't pay his taxes, and he's headed to jail. What the hell would he lie about? But then the next guy is some politician with a suit and tie on. He's telling you what he's going to do for America. And you're like, no, you're not. You're lying, cheating, stealing. I mean, I have so little faith in these guys.
Howard, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the reason why you came up with the 30-day MBA, can you explain that? Because I actually loved it. And I think a lot of people need to watch that on YouTube, it really keeps dentistry and just the business of dentistry really just straightforward and very common sense. A lot of people they hire people for $30,000, $40,000 to be a consultant, come into your office to tell you how you could just do something so basic as the 30-day MBA. So can you just go over that real quick, just for me?
Well, have you ever
go.
Have you ever seen anybody, a premium athlete with a personal trainer? I mean, you go to the gym, everyone with a personal trainer is like, it's like their date or some entertainer, like, it's some, but anyway, the 30-day MBA was real simple. I bought my first laptop in 98 when I signed up for the ASU MBA. And it was every Monday and Wednesday night from 6 to 10, 2 classes, 6 to 8, 8 to 10. And it was 3 trimester years. So it was 2 core courses. So it was 2, 4, 6, 12 courses. And I took that laptop and I just fired it up, and it was a new thing back then. And I just took notes of whenever it was about dentistry. And then when they would do the class project, they always want us to do it on Intel or Dell or Cisco. And I'd say, look, I don't give a shit about Cisco. I got a dental office. And you had to break up in teams of 5. And I said, anybody in my team, free pizzas, we'll meet at the restaurant or whatever the hell. And so every one of the 2 classes, the team project was on my Today's Dental. And so I saw it as a 2-year sabbatical of getting away from the house, your kids, the Nintendo, and after work, going up there 1 night a week. And I found the friendships and the camaraderies about all these people from all these other businesses. I was taking notes, and then when I was done, I had my notes and I ranted it out, and it was 30 hours. So I called it the 30-day dental MBA, and it was and what's really cool now is that was in 98. So now 20 years later, they're free on YouTube and they're free on iTunes. And every time someone says, "Oh, I watched those, man, I just loved them," I say, "Well, dude, that was 1998. You weren't even born in 98. Does it still apply?" And
yes,
they always say it's people are people. The geometry and people aren't going to change much in the next 1,000 years. And I really enjoyed that. And I'll tell you what, and then I went halfway through my master's in public health too. And I was really glad I was doing it. But then life just got too busy. But what I love the most about continuing education, let's talk about Pittsburgh. When you say Pittsburgh, not only do I think of Terry Bradshaw, but I signed up for the MAGD and the FAGD, and they said you had to take, they had to break up these hours in like 8 different areas. And I told the guy, I said, well, look, I'm not doing ortho and implants. I'm doing fillings, crown and bridge, so I shouldn't have to take that. And he's like, no, you have to. And I, well, you're just, I was all mad. He's like, Howard, you need to be well-rounded. You need to cross-train. Even if you're not going to do ortho or implants, you need to understand it. So then I go up there, and I'm looking for a course because Arizona at that time didn't have a dental school or nothing. And here's this University of Pittsburgh, and they got this guy I never heard of named Carl Mish, and he's got this 7 3-day weekend thing. And I looked at it, and all I saw was I could knock out all my requirements at this one place. So I signed up. I went in there, and I would just love it first sight. And what was the first thing Carl said is, they said, well, how'd you get an implant? He goes, well, I was a prosthodontist, and I was doing removable. And what pissed me off is whenever the implant guys, the oral surgeons, their implants would break, they'd always blame it on the implant. I'm looking, that's the worst bite I've ever seen. I mean, you're blaming your occlusion bite atrocity on the poor guy making the implant. And again, so he was cross-trained. So he went to removable, and then he went to fixed. And my gosh, I love that. But that's what I tell dentists, that you got to learn all the specialties enough to diagnosis and treatment plan. Now,
can I just say, it's funny, Carl, I think it was a year or 2 before he had passed away. And I went to a course. I was doing another course, I think Academy of Osseointegration. And they had the same thing. They had his course in Orlando. So we got a chance to sit in on his course. And it was amazing to me how many dentists were asking him questions that he could answer. You could actually look up in his book and get the answer to. And it was amazing to me. I'm thinking to myself, like, why don't you just read the book? If you read the book, you wouldn't be asking this. You could actually ask more in-depth questions. But instead, you basically took his course to ask him questions that you could have asked in the book.
Yeah, that's the best value in dentistry. I kind of look at these weekend courses of like a personal trainer. I had two personal trainers for 3 years, and they were
Right.
the two hottest, sexiest, most gorgeous personal trainers in Ahwatukee. Because I knew that would get me out of bed in the morning. You know what I mean? To go chase those two people. But it worked for me. You got to know yourself. But I look at these courses versus the textbook. I mean, you can buy a textbook for $200 and you can't read it in a week and comprehend it. And then you go to a lecture. It's kind of like, have you ever gone to a movie where you'd read the book and when no one ever walks out and says, God, the movie was better than the book.
Right.
100% of the time, the
Right.
book was better than the movie. And you can buy a $200 book on endo or perio or Pathways of the Pulp by Stephen Cohen. There's even that book on the, what was that book by Mish, not Carl Mish, was it Randall Mish, on implant failures? Have you read that one?
No, I haven't actually.
Implant failures by I'm thinking it's Mish out of Michigan. Is it Randall Mish? Oh yeah. Mish, Avoiding Complications in Oral
Okay.
Implantology by Randolph
Yeah.
R. Resnick and Carl E. Mish. Okay, so it's
Yes.
Randall Resnick. And
yeah.
I mean, there's a 600-page book for a couple $100 that, I mean, every page is just like, wow. And you can just do the time. I know a dentist in right here up the street in Maricopa. And he learned implants. He came home every night. He's married, kids, all that stuff. He came home every night, just on his big screen, just open up YouTube and put dental implant surgery, and would just sit there every night for an hour doing his thing, watching implant surgery. And after 1 year of just random Googling dental implant surgery on YouTube, he started placing implants. And then when you go to these other countries that don't have the infrastructure, don't have the dental resources, they all read textbooks. And they'll buy a $200 textbook like this, and 9 guys will read it at the same time, So you can read your way to success. You can do everything low cost. But what I've noticed about dentists is, well, do you want to read a $200 book and learn everything about implant failures? No, I want to sign up for this $3,000 weekend club. They can't, they always overspend on their house, their car. Instead of 2 kids, they have 4. And, instead of going to, the lake, they go to Maui. I mean, most dentists, you can't even find one financial area where they live just at the median of America.
Right.
They're always, dentists, physicians, and lawyers are always over the top, and then they're stressed because they got to make all this money for this lifestyle. And it's like, God dang, man, it's just, how do you get these kids with $400,000 in student loans to live below their means?
That's something Walter and I talk about because I actually follow your advice and live below my means. I live in a double wide trailer.
Nice.
That's I put a double wide trailer in on my parents' farm in my hometown. So, and that's more house than I need right now, but it's very comfortable. And I completely agree with you, Howard. Live below your means, pay off your debt, and it takes away a lot of that financial stress.
Yeah.
Can I start calling you Trailer Trash Kyle?
Now we know what to say on the podcast now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's less to clean, less to energy, less everything. I mean, just living below your means. And I tell that to other dentists where they get all upset when their kid did something and it ruined the lawn or the house. Well, if you got a house or a lawn where a kid can ruin something, buddy, that's all you. That's not a 2-year-old kid. A 2-year-old kid should not be able to ruin anything in your home.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, for me, I lived, like you said, I mean, Kyle said it best. I mean, I had a RAV4 that was 12 years old. I lived in an apartment until I was able to pay my student loans off. After that, the freedom is just there. I just think you just got to be patient. And that's the problem. I don't think we're patient enough because we've been promised this amazing lifestyle but we don't know how people got to that level. You know what I mean? It's definitely not just coming out making 150, but spending like you make 300. A lot of people don't realize that credit is not your friend all the time.
This is I can't believe we've gone over an hour and we're now in overtime and all that stuff. But I want to ask you a question. I want to get, this is accidentally incorrect. This is we're gonna tell you the truth be told is they come out of school $400,000 in student loan debt, and those ADA dues are a lot of money. Is it a return on investment, or should you just buy beer and bacon with that money?
I think it's a return on investment, because especially none of us saw a pandemic coming, and to have an organization like the ADA that was really fighting for dentistry when it comes to, I mean, the government money that came out, the PPP loans, the CARES Act grants, the trying to get the money forgiven, they were really the only voice dentistry had in supporting us. A lot of our offices were shut down by the government, and to have the ADA fighting for us to be able to reopen, for them dealing with the Department of Health and other things, that made me want to pay my dues a lot more than I have in the past.
I don't agree with that. I'll be honest with you. The ADA for me was when the pandemic hit, it was when actually they went silent for a while. And that's just my personal, and this is again, coming down here in Texas, I didn't hear much of anything. It was just like, oh, well, this is what the governor said, so we're going to do what the governor said. It wasn't, let's try to give them facts to why dentists, and even it's actually funny, I was looking up today, if you go to perio.org, you'll see an article that they basically posted that said that dentists have, I think, 1 or 2 transmission or positive COVID transmission. And we've actually gone out of our way to basically reduce the admission of COVID. And we were sterilizing more, we're wearing double masks and stuff like that. I don't think the ADA had much to do with that at all. I think dentists took it upon themselves to say, I got to make sure that my business stays valid and open, and to also reduce the fear of patients. I didn't see an ADA commercial to patients saying your dentist is here for you and this is the reduction and this and this and that. I didn't see anything like that. Yeah, you may have talked to your members, but you didn't talk to the general population of dentists. They were quiet in my mind, but again, this is when Kyle and I differ.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The biggest fear in my head is the government, because there's nobody else that can come in, shut me down, or ruin my business.
But they did.
They did.
Yeah.
And the ADA,
and the ADA was nowhere to be found.
But they continued to advocate for us.
Okay,
yeah, and that's my problem. I mean, I've always loved I've always loved math, physics, chemistry, biology, dentistry, history, and I mean, I don't know what anybody has read in 5,000 years of history where the government was the good guy.
That's
so
right.
whenever, I mean, in history, I mean, it was like, I mean, you don't go to the zoo and say, hey, I think I'm going to crawl in the cage with the lion. But everybody always wants to run to the government when they have a problem. And it's like, I just wish they'd read one history book ever. And I mean, even in dentistry, like I say, the only reason we have people that can't go to the dentist is because the government board will stop anybody from Molar City coming up here and setting up a dental office in Guadalupe. They would arrest them, they'd handcuff them, they'd put them in a cage, they'd deport them, and then when they're done doing all that violence, they'd say, well, we need more money for health care for the poor, so we're going to confiscate 60% of your money and wages, and if you don't pay that, you're going to go to jail, we're going to beat you, and we're going to sit in a cage, and it's like, and when you see AOC just sit there and say, well, yeah, I have no problem raising the minimum taxes 60%, I'm like, well, thanks for at least not shooting me, Stalin. I'd rather you just steal my money than to just shoot me, but they don't even blink, and I just wish the millennials would stop drooling all over themselves every time someone says government and realize that they've never been your friend. I can't find any historical evidence where they were on the right side of anything. I mean, hell, even prohibition, 18 and 21. We'll put you in jail if you do it, and then now we'll let you out of jail. I mean, they're just a nightmare. But life's tough. I figure the pyramids were made 5,000 years ago. They didn't even figure that out to Pythagoras and 2,500 years ago. I figure we probably got 2,500 years to go to be at a pretty good mathematical level, and probably a full 5,000 years to go before we comprehend half of this, what's going on. So I figure, imagine being born during the last ice age. I mean, no matter what you did with your life, you couldn't have really changed any events. And I just figure that I'm living during the Flintstone era, and you just gotta like Barney and Fred and go drinking with them and realize that, and it's just the Flintstones. I mean, you look at what anybody says, and it's like, I mean, half the things you hear anybody say is like, dude, a 4-second Google search would correct that. I mean, I can't wait till the iPhone has a earphone Google search say, no, that it wasn't 1682, it was 17. I mean, yeah, it's just crazy. But hey, we're way over time, and I got a dentist sitting here who wants to show me his new invention. But love your show. Are you uploading that on Dental Town yet?
Yeah, I think so, but I will definitely do better. I'll do better. I want to say we have 1 or 2 episodes, but I can always knock the rest on there for sure.
So before we go, yeah, I wanted to say thank you for everything you do. I was in my residency at the VA Hospital, and you and Gordon Christensen came to Bedford at the Bedford Springs Hotel. You were the very first continuing education that I went to, and I've been following you ever since. And it's an honor to be on this podcast with you.
I'm surprised you didn't drop out of dentistry and switch to podiatry or chiropractic or something else. But thanks for the kind words. And I remember I've lectured with Gordon a couple times, and that's always fun. It's a lot better if I go first and then he goes, because if you follow, the Pope, right. They hold you to too high of a standard. But thanks so much for coming on the show. Thanks for doing the podcast. I think what you're doing is fantastic, man. Keep keeping it real.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
All right, brother. Later.